My name is Issa, and I'm a professor of literature and history at Birmingham City University. Welcome to my exp. There are many ways to approach Shakespeare's presence. We can probably start by saying Shakespeare's a phenomenon. We don't quite know why. There are many of us, for decades, trying to understand why Shakespeare. Some things come to mind, like the education system. Education system, one could say, imposes Shakespeare. Cultural hierarchy, in some ways, imposes Shakespeare. We think of, for example, Romeo and Juliet, and many people over the years have called Majnun and Layla from the 7th century, which is a similar story, the Romeo and Juliet of the East. Yet it was written hundreds of years before Romeo and Juliet. And so we have a cultural hierarchy that no doubt does exist. Shakespeare has a special status. Shakespeare is one of the most popular and respected writers around the world. Shakespeare's plays do have a simplicity. They almost have a three-stage structure. Romeo and Juliet fall in love. Romeo and Juliet try to be together. Romeo and Juliet die. We can, in a way, simplify Shakespeare to those beginnings, middles, and ends. But even more fascinatingly, and it's a reason why translation can be possible with Shakespeare in one way or another, is the simplicity of the language. To give a couple of examples, the beginning of Othello, his friend, supposedly Iago, is going to trick him into thinking that his wife Desdemona is cheating on him. And in the first scene, he finishes a conversation with him. Iago turns to the audience and says, "I am not what I am. I am not what I am." It's a simple phrase. It's a phrase a kid would understand. What's he saying? He's saying, yeah, he thinks I'm his friend, but I'm not. He thinks he can trust me, but he shouldn't. But that simplicity with Shakespeare is so much more. Not only does it develop the plot, develop the characters, it's telling us more about Iago. Because who says, "I am that I am"? It's Jehovah. It's God by the burning bush in the Old Testament. "I am that I am." He's telling us that he's sacrilegious. "I am not what I am." He's going against divine will. He's going against how humans are supposed to be with one another. And I'd add to that no actor stands on the stage and says, "I am not what I am," is lying, because they're actors. That's the simplicity of Shakespeare, but it's a simplicity that lends itself to so much more. When we think of a character like Romeo, the influence he's had on popular culture, Romeo. You say the word Romeo anywhere around the world, and people will have some impression of what it is, which might not even be true. It can often be a man who has many female acquaintances, whereas Romeo probably does not represent that. Or we think of a scene like the balcony scene in Romeo and Juliet, which is an ingrained part of popular culture around the world. When we think of balconies, they represent so much. They represent, yes, it's a nice breeze, but a balcony can represent something unreachable. In many cultures, people fall in love across the balconies, talk to one another across the balconies. During COVID, we've seen the importance of balconies. The balcony scene is a scene in popular culture that stays in people's minds. And then quotes, obviously nothing as famous as to be or not to be, used by people over history in every language, to the extent that sometimes we forget it's a Shakespeare phrase. I read Shakespeare in many ways as a businessman. I don't think it's a bad thing to say. The Romantics, for example, would have us believe that Shakespeare sat contemplatively thinking of the next inspiring, prophetic thing to write. But Shakespeare also is aware of what his audience wanted. That's why he provided them with exotic locations, fascinating characters, and violence. And so if we continue that today, then are we not continuing that legacy that Shakespeare created? That can mean adapting, perhaps even appropriating. It can mean modernizing. Shakespeare's themes can speak to our present concerns. And so performance can change certain aspects. There is that fluidity and flexibility in Shakespeare. In many ways, traditionalists believe that it has to be performed in exactly the same way it was intended. But I think you get a lot out of Shakespeare when you adapt it to the concerns of that particular society and that particular context and moment.